Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are doing something that, might sound a little terrifying to some of you.
Just a little.
Okay, maybe a lot, and maybe a little dry to others, but I promise you by the end of this hour, you're going to feel like you have a superpower.
That's a big promise.
It is, but I think we can deliver. We are tackling a monster, and I mean that, well, quite literally for the law students listening. We are talking about constitutional law.
Ah, yes. The dreaded con law. The subject that keeps first-year law students awake at night and makes the rest of us scratch our heads when we watch the news.
Exactly. And specifically, we are looking at it through a very particular lens, the multi-state bar exam, or the MBE.
Right.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not taking the bar exam. Why do I care?
It's a fair question.
But here's the hook, and this is really the key. The bar exam doesn't test you on the weird, obscure, once-in-a-lifetime edge cases. It tests you on the fundamental operating system of the United States.
That's a great way to put it. It tests the architecture, the blueprints.
So even if you never plan to set foot in a courtroom, this is about understanding the rules of the game we are all playing. But, usually when you think of constitutional law, you picture these dusty libraries.
Are absolutely stacks of books as tall as a person. And this feeling that you have to memorize 300 years of Supreme Court history.
Yeah, that you need to know what James Madison had for breakfast in 1787 to answer a single question.
It just feels massive, unknowable.
But here is the good news. We have a source today, a document titled Constitutional Foundations for the Bar Examination, that claims you don't need to do that. You don't need to drink the whole ocean.
That's right. This source is essentially a cheat sheet. It's a roadmap. It argues that for the purpose of the exam, and frankly for the purpose of a layman really understanding this system, you can ignore about 90% of the noise.
90%.
You don't need to be a historian. You just need to understand a few specific, manageable pillars.
So that is our mission today. We are going to take these legal headers, which, let's be honest, usually sound like gibberish.
They do.
And we're going to translate them into layman terms. Simple language only.
No Latin, no heretofore, or whereas. Just plain English.
We're doing this for you, the listener. Maybe you're a law student in a full-blown panic.
We see you. We've been there.
Or maybe you're just someone who wants to yell at the TV with a little more accuracy during the next big political debate. We are going to build a mental framework.
And the goal isn't to memorize dozens of case names. That's not the point. The goal is to spot patterns. The MBE is a standardized test, which means it relies on rules. In this source, it identifies what it calls the big four buckets, where those rules live.
Okay, let's give the listener the roadmap before we start driving. According to our source, what are these big four pillars of constitutional law?
Okay, here is your map. It's actually pretty simple when you lay it out. Pillar 1 is the rule makers.
The rule makers.
That's Congress. Pillar 2 is the referees.
The courts.
Exactly. Pillar 3 is the voice. That's the First Amendment. And Pillar 4 is the shield. That is the 14th Amendment.
The rule makers, the referees, the voice, and the shield.
That's it.
Honestly, if you can just keep those four buckets in your head, you are already ahead of half the people trying to figure this stuff out.
Without a doubt.
So let's dive in. Let's go to what you called the engine room. Let's talk about Pillar 1, the rule makers.
Good.
The source lists this first point very, very specifically. It says, Article 1, Section 8, Congress's power. Now, I have to ask, why specifically Section 8? I mean, isn't the whole first article of the Constitution about Congress?
It is, yes. The whole thing sets up the House and the Senate. But Section 8 is special. And this is probably the first major mental shift the listener needs to make.
Okay.
We tend to think that Congress, the federal government, can basically do whatever it wants. If they have the votes, they pass a law, and that's that.
Right. That's the assumption. If 535 people in Washington agree to pass the Save the Puppies Act, then, well, we save the puppies.
Wrong. And that's the whole ball game. In the American system, the federal government is a government of enumerated powers.
Enumerated, meaning listed.
Exactly. Listed. Think of Article 1, Section 8 as Congress's official shopping list.
A shopping list. I like that.
Or a job description. It's a really useful analogy. Imagine you hire a contractor to fix a leaky roof. You write out a contract that says, very clearly, fix the roof.
Okay.
If you come home and find them remodeling your kitchen, you're going to be mad.
I'd be furious. And I'd say, you don't have the authority to do that. What are you doing?
Exactly. You pull out the contract and say, show me. Show me in this contract where it says kitchen. That is precisely how the Constitution treats Congress. If Congress passes a law, the very first question isn't, is this a good idea?
Or is it popular?
No. The first question, the only question that matters at the start is this on the shopping list in Section 8?
And if it's not on the list?
Then they can't do it. Full stop. It doesn't matter if it's the greatest idea in human history. It doesn't matter if 100% of the public wants it. If the authority isn't on that list, the law is unconstitutional.
That is surprisingly strict, much more than I think people realize.
It's the bedrock of the whole system, limited government.
So what is actually on this list? What items does Congress have in their shopping cart?
Well, there are about 18 of them, but for the exam and for, a functional understanding, it really boils down to a few heavy hitters. The source just says Congress's power. But that usually means three big things: money, war, and commerce.
Money, war, and commerce. Okay, let's break those down. Let's start with money.
All right, first up, money. Congress has the power to tax and the power to spend. This is absolutely huge. They can levy taxes, and they can spend that money to provide for the common defense and general welfare.
Okay, hold on. General welfare. That sounds enormous. That sounds like a catch-all. Doesn't that mean they can do anything they think is for the general welfare?
And you just walked right into the single biggest trap on the bar exam.
I did. Oh, boy.
You did. And don't feel bad. Literally everyone does. The general welfare clause is only a string attached to the power to spend money.
Wait, what does that mean?
It means Congress can spend money for the general welfare, but they cannot make laws or regulate for the general welfare.
Explain the difference. I'm not sure I see it.
Okay, perfect. Let's use an example. Let's say Congress decides people are too sedentary. It's a health crisis. They want everyone in America to do 10 jumping jacks every morning at 8 a.m. That's definitely for the general welfare, right? Health is good.
Sure, I can see the argument.
Can Congress pass a law that says all citizens must perform 10 jumping jacks daily?
Based on what you just said, I'm going to guess no.
Correct. A resounding no. Because mandatory exercise is not on the Article 1, Section 8 shopping list, and general welfare is not a permission slip to make rules. It's only a permission slip to open the country's wallet.
So they can't force me to do jumping jacks?
No. However, and this is the big loophole, this is where the power comes from. They can use the spending power. They can go to the states and say, hey, we've got $1 billion here for highway funding. It's great.
Right.
But we're only giving it to states that pass their own mandatory jumping jack law.
That's incredibly passive-aggressive.
It is the foundation of modern federalism. It's called conditioning funds. It's basically bribery, and it's constitutional. It's how they effectively set a national drinking age of 21.
Right. I remember that. They couldn't pass a federal law?
No, because that's a local police power.
Yeah.
So they just told the states, raise your drinking age to 21, or you lose 10% of your federal highway funds.
And what did the states do?
What do you think they did? They took the money.
So for the listener, the key takeaway is Congress can't force you, but they can definitely bribe your state government to force you.
That is the money power in a nutshell. Then you have the war power, which is pretty self-explanatory. They could declare war, raise an army, fund the military. Pretty straightforward.
Okay.
But the real heavyweight champion, the one that shows up on the exam constantly and explains most of modern federal law, is the Commerce Clause.
Interstate commerce. I feel like I remember this from like 8th grade civics class.
It is the Super Mario star of legislative power. It gives Congress the power to regulate commerce among the several states.
Which on its face sounds simple. It implies trade that is crossing state lines, trucks, trains, shipping goods from New Jersey to Pennsylvania.
And that's what it meant originally. For the first 100+ years of the country, it was interpreted very narrowly. But over the last century, starting around the New Deal, the courts have expanded this definition to be, well, massive.
How massive?
Today, it covers 3 distinct things. 1, the channels of commerce. So yes, roads, rivers, the internet.
Yeah.
2, the instrumentalities of commerce, the things doing the moving, like trucks, planes, people.
Okay.
And 3, this is the big one, any activity that, in the aggregate, has a substantial economic effect on interstate commerce.
A substantial economic effect. That sounds vague enough to drive a truck through.
It is. And the classic case that every law student learns, and you really need to know this story to get it, is a case called Wickard v. Filburn.
Okay, tell me the story.
It's about a farmer in Ohio named Roscoe Filburn. This was back in the 1940s during the Great Depression. The federal government had passed a law to stabilize wheat prices, which meant they set quotas on how much wheat farmers could grow.
Right.
Roscoe Filburn grew more than his quota. But, and this is the key, he used the extra wheat entirely on his own farm. He fed it to his own animals. He used it for his own family. He wasn't selling it. It wasn't crossing state lines. It was purely local personal wheat.
So logically, Congress shouldn't be able to touch him. It's not interstate, and you could even argue it's not commerce if he's just feeding his own pigs.
That's what Roscoe Filburn said. He said, "Leave me alone. This is my farm, my wheat." But the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, said no.
How could they possibly justify that?
They argued that even though his personal wheat consumption was tiny, if you imagined every farmer doing the same thing,
The aggregation.
the aggregation principle. If millions of farmers all grew their own wheat for their own use, nobody would need to buy wheat on the national market. Prices would plummet. The entire national economy would shift. Therefore, your little backyard patch of wheat has a substantial effect on the national market.
That is the ultimate butterfly effect. A guy grows a little extra wheat in Ohio, and the price of bread changes in New York.
Exactly. And because of this one case, this incredibly broad interpretation, Congress can regulate almost anything that is remotely economic.
Like what? What modern laws rely on this?
Almost all of them. Major environmental laws like the Clean Air Act, labor laws like the federal minimum wage, anti-discrimination laws in hotels and restaurants. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was upheld on Commerce Clause grounds.
How did they argue that?
They argued that racial discrimination in, say, a local diner deters people of color from traveling interstate, which disrupts the flow of commerce.
So going back to our shopping list analogy, it seems like the commerce item on the list is written in giant, bold, neon letters and covers about half the page.
It absolutely does. But, and this is vital for the test and for understanding the limits, it is not infinite. The modern Supreme Court has started to push back a little. The key is that the activity being regulated has to be economic in nature.
Give me an example of what they can't do.
Okay, a famous case from the 90s, United States v. Lopez. Congress tried to pass a law banning the possession of guns in a school zone.
Sounds like a good idea.
A very popular idea.
Yeah.
But what's the constitutional authority? They argued it was the Commerce Clause.
Let me guess their argument. Guns in schools lead to violence. Violence disrupts education. An uneducated workforce hurts the national economy.
That was the exact argument. It sounds just like the weed argument, right? It's a chain of events.
It does.
But the Supreme Court, for the first time in decades, said, stop. They said that is too many steps. Carrying a gun, unlike farming or running a hotel, is not an economic activity. If we let you regulate that, you can regulate literally everything. Family law, criminal law, everything becomes federal. So they struck the law down.
So the line in the sand is economic activity.
That's the modern line.
So the mental tag for the listener here, for Pillar 1, is authority. When you see Congress acting in a question, you have to stop and ask, do they have the permission slip? Is it money? Is it war? Is it commerce? And if it's none of those, the answer is probably unconstitutional.
Perfect. That is the entire engine room in a nutshell.
All right, that was a lot, but it makes sense. So let's move to Pillar 2. We have the rule makers, now we need the referees. The source lists this simply as Article 3, the courts.
Article 3, the judiciary.
Now, when I think of the Supreme Court, I think of, 9 people in robes deciding what the Constitution means. Big landmark cases. But the source seems to focus less on that and more on the structure of the court, specifically the concept of jurisdiction.
Right. And this is the next big layman to lawyer translation. Article 3 basically means the courts are not the boss of everything. They're referees, but they're incredibly passive referees.
Passive? What do you mean by that?
A referee in a football game runs around, sees a foul, and throws a flag. The Supreme Court sits in a chair in the press box and waits for the players to come up to them, fill out a bunch of paperwork, and prove that there was a foul.
Okay.
This is the case or controversy requirement, which is right there in the text of Article 3. It's a huge limitation.
So they can't just wake up one morning, read the newspaper, see a law they think is unconstitutional, and just strike it down.
Never. Absolutely not. They cannot issue what are called advisory opinions. The president can't just call them up and ask, hey, if I sign this bill, is it constitutional? The court would say, we can't tell you. Pass it, enforce it against someone, let that person sue, and if the case makes it all the way to us, we'll decide then.
So they need a real fight.
A real fight between real people with real stakes. That has already happened. And that leads to the biggest gatekeeping concept in all of federal law, a word I'm sure you've heard all the time, standing.
Yeah.
Standing, yes. This is the bouncer at the door of the federal courthouse. If you don't have standing, you don't get in. End of story.
Okay, explain it like I'm 5. What is standing?
It means you have skin in the game. It's that simple. To get into court, you, the person suing, have to show 3 things. First, an injury, a real one.
What counts as a real injury?
It'd have to be concrete and particularized. You lost money, you got physically hurt, you lost your job. It can't be, I'm sad that the environment is being harmed, or I'm philosophically offended by this law.
So if Congress passes a law declaring National Ugly Hat Day, and I just really hate ugly hats, I can't sue just because I'm annoyed by seeing them everywhere.
Nope. You have suffered no concrete injury. Your aesthetic displeasure doesn't count.
Okay, so a real injury. What's the second thing?
Causation. You have to be able to draw a straight line from what the government did to your injury. And third, redressability.
That's a fancy lawyer word.
It just means the court can fix it. If the judge rules in your favor, does your problem go away? If a court order won't actually solve your problem, then why are we here? It would just be an advisory opinion, which they can't give.
Okay, injury, causation, redressability. Let's look at a classic trick question that I know the MBE loves. The angry taxpayer.
Oh, the angry taxpayer. This guy shows up on every single bar exam without fail.
So here's the scenario. Congress passes a law, and they're spending $1 billion on something you think is incredibly stupid. Let's say the National Museum of Boring Rocks.
I'd be angry. That's my tax money paying for that.
Exactly. So you sue. You go to court and say, I am a U.S. taxpayer, and this is an unconstitutional and wasteful use of my money. Do you have standing?
I feel like I should. It is my money. I have an injury. I lost money. And the answer 99.9% of the time is no.
Why not?
Because your personal contribution to that specific museum is fractions of a penny. The court says your injury is not particular to you. It's a generalized grievance shared by all taxpayers. If everyone is injured in the same tiny way, then nobody is injured enough to get into federal court.
So the angry taxpayer almost always loses.
Almost always. There's a tiny, tiny exception if Congress is spending money in a way that violates the Establishment Clause of religion, but for the purpose of this simple guide, just assume the angry taxpayer gets kicked out of court every time.
This really reinforces that idea of the passive referee. They are actively trying to avoid cases. They ignore the people yelling from the stands. They only pay attention when a player on the field actually breaks a leg.
That's a great analogy. And to extend it, the timing of the injury has to be just right, too. This is where we get the twin concepts of ripeness and mootness.
Ripeness and mootness. Okay, it sounds like we are inspecting fruit at the grocery store.
We basically are. Ripeness asks, is it too early? Has the injury actually happened yet? If Congress passes a law that says, in the year 2040, all cars must be painted pink, and you sue today in 2026.
I haven't been hurt yet. I haven't been forced to paint my car or gotten a ticket.
Exactly. The case isn't ripe. The court will say, this is a hypothetical problem. Come back in 2040 if you actually get a ticket. They don't deal with what ifs.
Okay, so that's too early. What's mootness?
Mootness asks, is it too late? Is the fight over? If you sue your university to be allowed to participate in a specific graduation ceremony, but the case takes 2 years to resolve, and the ceremony happened long ago,
The case is moot. There's nothing the court can do to help me anymore.
the controversy is dead. It's moot. The court will dismiss it.
So the referee checks the calendar and the clock. Not too early, not too late.
Correct, unless, and this is a fun little exception you see in the exam, the injury is capable of repetition, yet evading review.
That sounds poetic.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
The classic example is pregnancy. A lawsuit can take years. A human pregnancy takes 9 months. If a woman is suing for the right to an abortion, the case will almost certainly not reach the Supreme Court before the baby is born.
So technically her specific case would always be moot by the time it gets there.
Always. And the court would never be able to rule on the issue, so they created this exception. If it's a short-duration event that is likely to happen again, either to the same person or to other people, they will hear the case, even if the specific plaintiff isn't in that situation anymore.
And that's how we got the ruling in Roe v. Wade.
That's exactly how.
Fascinating. So wrapping up Pillar 2 on the courts. They are the referees, but they are also intense gatekeepers. They check your ticket at the door, that's standing. They check the clock, that's ripeness and mootness. And only if you pass all those tests do they even begin to look at the substance of the law.
Precisely. They're the system's stop button, but you have to work incredibly hard just to get your hand near it.
All right, this is making sense. We have the rule makers and the referees. Now, let's get to the part everyone thinks of when they hear constitutional law. Let's talk about the rights. Pillar 3, the voice.
The First Amendment. Congress shall make no law. The famous words.
The source breaks this into 2 big chunks, speech and religion. Let's start with speech.
The First Amendment is, I think it's fair to say, probably the most misunderstood part of the Constitution by the general public.
I 100% agree. People seem to think it means I can say whatever I want, wherever I want, without any consequences.
And that is absolutely not true. The key distinction, the single most important thing you must learn for the MBE on this topic, is the difference between content and conduct.
Content versus conduct. Unpack that for us.
Okay, content is the message itself. The idea, I hate the president, or love the president, or the earth is flat. The government generally cannot touch the content of your speech. If they try to pass a law that bans a specific viewpoint or subject, that is called a content-based regulation.
And what happens if the government passes a content-based law?
The court brings out its biggest, most powerful weapon, a test called strict scrutiny. And under strict scrutiny, the government almost always loses.
So I have a right to my message.
You have the right to be wrong, you have the right to be offensive, you have the right to hold an unpopular opinion. The government cannot be the editor of your reality.
Okay, so that's content. What is conduct?
Conduct is the how, when, and where of your speech. We call these time, place, and manner restrictions.
Okay, give me an example to make that clear.
Let's say you want to protest a new tax law. You have a First Amendment right to your message. Taxes are too high. That's content. But you decide to express this message by screaming it through a megaphone at 3 o'clock in the morning in a quiet residential neighborhood.
My neighbors would not be happy. People are sleeping.
Right. The town can pass a law that says no use of amplified sound systems in residential areas between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
And that is allowed. That doesn't violate your free speech.
It's perfectly allowed because that law is content neutral. It applies to everyone equally. It doesn't matter if you're screaming about taxes or singing opera or reading the Declaration of Independence. The rule is about the noise and the time. That's the conduct, not about the message, the content.
This feels like a very subtle but very important trap.
It is the trap. The bar exam will give you a scenario where a town bans all offensive billboards near highways.
And on the surface, that sounds good. Nobody wants to see offensive stuff while they're driving.
But wait, ask the question. Who decides what is offensive?
The government official.
And if they are making a decision based on the meaning of the words on the billboard, the message that is content-based, boom, strict scrutiny, unconstitutional.
Ah, I see it now. But if the town banned all flashing digital billboards because they are a safety hazard that distracts drivers?
That's about safety. That's about the manner of the speech. There's a content-neutral regulation of conduct that is allowed.
So for the listener, when you see a free speech question, the first thing you do is check if the government is shutting you up because of what you said or because of how, when, or where you said it.
That is the entire analysis right there.
Now, are there any types of content that get less protection? I mean, you can't just threaten the president, right?
Great question. Yes, there are a few very narrow, historically unprotected categories of speech. Things like incitement to imminent lawless action, the classic example of falsely shouting fire in a crowded theater. Defamation libel and slander, and obscenity. But these categories are defined very, very narrowly.
Okay. Let's pivot to the other half of the voice, religion. The source lists the two clauses we all know, the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause.
The twin pillars of religious freedom. And what's fascinating is that they're often at war with each other.
At war? How so?
Well, let's define them first. The Establishment Clause basically says the government cannot establish a religion. No official Church of America. No mandatory prayer in public schools. The government has to be neutral toward religion.
Right. Thomas Jefferson's wall of separation between church and state.
That's the idea. But then you have the Free Exercise Clause. This says the government cannot stop you from freely exercising your religion. They can't prohibit your beliefs or, for the most part, your practices.
Okay, that seems straightforward enough. Where's the conflict?
The conflict happens when the government tries to step back and be neutral. Imagine a public high school that allows student clubs to meet in empty classrooms after hours. You've got the chess club, the drama club, the French club.
General high school? Sure.
Then a group of students comes to the principal and says they want to start a student-led Bible study club.
Okay.
Now, the principal's in a bind. If the school says, yes, you can use the classroom, are they violating the Establishment Clause by appearing to endorse or support religion?
You could see someone making that argument.
But if the school says, no, you can't meet, because they're afraid of establishing a religion, the students will sue, screaming that the school is violating their free exercise rights by discriminating against them based on their religious viewpoint.
It's a total catch-22. If they allow it, they might be establishing. If they ban it, they are prohibiting.
Exactly. And for the MBE, and this reflects the current Supreme Court's trends, the tie generally goes to free exercise. The court's modern view is that if you create a forum that's open to secular clubs, you must allow religious clubs to participate on equal terms. To treat religion worse than chess is not neutrality, it's hostility.
That brings us to a really important rule for the listener. I've heard it called the Smith Rule from a case called Employment Division v. Smith.
Yes, this is absolutely crucial for a layman's understanding of religious freedom. Many people have this idea that my religion requires me to do X, so the law doesn't apply to me.
For example, my religion requires me to drive 100 miles per hour on the highway to get to services on time.
Right, a religious exemption from the speed limit. And the court in Smith said, no, as a general rule, that's not how it works. If a law is neutral and generally applicable.
Meaning it applies to everyone and isn't secretly targeting a specific religion?
Precisely. Then you have to follow it, regardless of your religious beliefs.
So I can't claim a religious exemption for speeding?
No, or for paying your taxes, or, in the case of Smith itself, for using peyote, which was an illegal drug in Oregon, even though it was part of a Native American religious ceremony.
So when would you win a free exercise case then?
You win when you can show the government is not being neutral. They're targeting you. Imagine a city that passes an ordinance banning the ritual slaughter of animals, but it has big exceptions for hunting and for commercial slaughterhouses.
So you can kill a deer for sport, but you can't sacrifice a chicken for religious reasons.
Exactly. That law isn't neutral or generally applicable. It's clearly targeting a specific religious practice, like Santeria. That law would be struck down.
So the voice, this whole third pillar, is about protecting our minds, our speech, and our faith. And the big rule is, government, you have to keep your hands off the content and you have to stay neutral.
That's a perfect summary.
Now we arrive at the final and maybe most important pillar, the shield. Pillar 4, the 14th Amendment.
This is the big one. I mean, you could argue this is the amendment that saved the Constitution from its own limitations.
Saved it. That's a strong word. How?
Well, a quick pop quiz. Before the Civil War, before the 14th Amendment was passed, did the First Amendment's free speech protection apply to the states?
I would assume so. It seems fundamental.
It did not. The First Amendment begins, Congress shall make no law. It only applied to the federal government. So technically, the state of Virginia could have established an official state church or censored the press. The U.S. Constitution didn't stop them.
That is actually terrifying.
It was a massive flaw. But after the Civil War, we got the 14th Amendment, and through a process called incorporation, it basically took most of the Bill of Rights and said, hey, states, guess what? You have to follow these rules now, too. And it gave us two monumental protections, due process and equal protection.
And the source we're using calls these more simply fairness and equality. Let's start with fairness or due process.
Due process, at its core, is a simple promise. The government cannot take away your life, your liberty, or your property without, well, a process.
What counts as a process? What do they have to give you?
At a bare minimum, notice and a hearing. They have to tell you what they're doing and why they're doing it, and they have to give you a chance to tell your side of the story before an impartial decision maker.
Let's use an example. Imagine I'm a tenured public school teacher. I have a contract. Can the principal just walk into my classroom one day and say, you're fired, get out?
No, absolutely not. That violates procedural due process. Because you have a property interest in your job created by that tenure contract, they have to give you notice of the charges against you in some kind of hearing where you can defend yourself.
Well, what if I'm not a public school teacher? What if I just work at a private coffee shop?
And now you've hit on another crucial gatekeeping idea, the state action doctrine.
State action.
That means the Constitution only applies to the government, to a state actor. Your boss at the private coffee shop can fire you because he doesn't like the color of your shoes. He's not the government.
This is a huge layman misunderstanding, I think. People get fired from a private job or kicked off a social media platform and scream, my First Amendment rights, or this is a violation of due process.
And legally, it means nothing. Unless the government is the one doing the firing or the censoring, the Constitution stays in the drawer.
Okay, so that's fairness, due process. Now let's talk equality, equal protection.
This is the idea that the government cannot treat one group of people, Group A, differently from another group, Group B, without a good reason. The government must treat similarly situated people alike.
But wait a minute, the government discriminates all the time. 10-year-olds are not allowed to drive. That's age discrimination. People who earn more money pay a higher tax rate. That's wealth discrimination.
Exactly. So obviously, some discrimination is allowed. The entire game of equal protection is figuring out when is it allowed. And this brings us to the most important analytical tool for this entire topic, the levels of scrutiny. Imagine a ladder with 3 rungs.
Okay, I'm picturing a ladder.
The bottom rung of the ladder is called rational basis review. This is the default test. It applies to most laws that discriminate based on things like age, wealth, disability, intelligence, most classifications.
And what does the government need to show to pass this test?
They just need a rational reason for the law. That's it. Is it rationally related to a legitimate government purpose? We don't let 10-year-olds drive because they are generally bad drivers. Is that rational?
Yes, of course.
Boom. The law is valid. The government almost always wins on this bottom rung. It's very easy to pass.
Okay, so that's the bottom rung. What's the middle rung?
The middle rung is intermediate scrutiny. This is a special category that applies mainly to classifications based on gender. If the government passes a law that treats men differently than women, they need more than just a rational reason. They need an important government interest. It's harder to do, but it's possible.
And the top rung of the ladder.
The top rung is the nuclear option. It's strict scrutiny, the same tough test we saw in free speech. This applies to any law that discriminates based on race, national origin, or alienated or citizenship status.
And what does the government need to show here?
If the government wants to treat black people differently than white people, they need a compelling reason, basically a matter of life and death, like national security. And the law must be narrowly tailored to achieve that interest.
Which means it's almost impossible to justify.
Correct. The government almost always loses on the top rung of the ladder. This is by design, given that the 14th Amendment was passed to end racial discrimination after the Civil War.
So for the listener studying for the MBE, this is the entire game. If you see a question about the government treating 2 groups differently, your first mental step is, which rung of the ladder are we on?
That is it.
Yeah.
You identify the classification. If it's a law that says we are forcing airline pilots to retire at age 65, the classification is age. That's the bottom rung, rational basis. Government wins. If it's a law that says we are only hiring people of Irish descent to be police officers, the classification is national origin. That's the top rung, strict scrutiny. Government loses badly.
It really is a formula. It's not about your personal feelings on the issue. It's about slotting the law into the right category.
That is the secret to con law on a standardized test. It's not philosophy. It's categorization.
Okay. We have built the machine. We have the rule makers in Article 1, the referees in Article 3, the voice in the First Amendment, and the shield in the 14th Amendment. Let's synthesize this. Let's put it all together.
Let's do it.
I want to walk through a hypothetical scenario, a messy, real-world problem, and we'll run it through our 4 pillars to see how the analysis works in practice.
Okay, hit me.
All right. Let's say the state of Columbia passes a law. The law bans the sale or rental of abnormally violent video games to anyone under the age of 18. The state legislature cites a study saying these games cause aggression in minors. A video game store owner sues the state.
A classic scenario. This is basically a real case. Brown v. Entertainment Merchants Association. Let's run the diagnostic using our 4 pillars.
Step 1. The rule makers. Who is acting and do they have the power?
The actor is a state, not Congress. So we aren't looking at Article 1 shopping list. States have what we call a general police power to pass laws for the health, safety, and welfare of their citizens. So, on its face, a law to protect children's well-being. Yeah, if you have the general authority to try. Pillar 1 is satisfied.
Okay. Step 2. The referees. Who is fighting and can they get into court?
The plaintiff is the video game store owner. Does he have standing? Let's check. Does he have an injury? Yes, he is losing money every day. This law is in effect. Is it caused by the state? Yes. Can the court fix it by striking down the law? Yes. He has standing. The referee says, play ball.
Good. Now for the main event. Step 3. The voice. Is someone being silenced?
This is the heart of the issue. First question, are video game speech protected by the First Amendment? The Supreme Court has said yes, they are a form of artistic expression like books or movies.
Is the law content-based or content-neutral?
Well, it only bans violent games. It doesn't ban Tetris or a racing game. It's targeting the message, the content.
Exactly. So it is content-based, which means we have to use which test?
The top run, strict scrutiny.
Strict scrutiny it is. So does the state have a compelling interest? Arguably, yes. Protecting the physical and psychological well-being of children is compelling. But is the law narrowly tailored to achieve that interest?
Meaning, is there proof that banning these games actually works and is the only way to do it?
Right. And the scientific data linking video games to actual youth violence is, to put it mildly, very shaky and contested. The court looked at the studies the state provided and said, this isn't good enough. You haven't proven the connection. Therefore, the law fails the narrow tailoring part of strict scrutiny. It violates the First Amendment.
Wow. And just for fun, let's run it through step 4, the shield. Is it unfair in an equal protection sense?
You could try to make an equal protection argument. The law treats people under 18 differently than people over 18, but what's the classification?
It's age.
And which rung of the ladder is age on?
The bottom rung. Rational basis.
So the state just needs a rational reason. Kids are more impressionable than adults, and we want to protect them. Is that rational?
Yes. So the law passes the 14th Amendment equal protection test,
Easily.
but it fails the First Amendment free speech test.
And in constitutional law, if you fail even one test, you're dead. The law is struck down.
That is incredibly satisfying. It takes what is usually a chaotic political and emotional debate and just turns it into a flowchart.
That is what lawyers learn to do. We don't ask, is this morally right? We ask, does this fit the structure? Does it pass the test?
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We took the monster of con law and broke it down into 4 manageable pillars. Let's do a final lightning review for the listener, just the core headlines of the 4 pillars.
Oh, let's do it.
Article 1, the rule makers. Congress needs a permission slip from its Section 8 shopping list. For the test, it's usually the Commerce Clause, or maybe the taxing and spending power. If it's not on the list, they can't do it.
Pillar 2.
Article 3, the referees. The courts are passive. They are gatekeepers. To get in the door, you need a real, concrete injury. That's standing. No generalized grievances.
Pillar 3.
The First Amendment, the voice. The government cannot target your message. That's content-based discrimination. But they can regulate the time, place, and manner. And they must be neutral between religion and non-religion.
And finally, Pillar 4.
The 14th Amendment, the shield. The government must treat people equally. To figure out if it can discriminate, you use the 3-rung ladder. Race is on the top rung. Strict scrutiny, government loses. Gender is in the middle. Age and everything else is on the bottom. Rational basis, government wins. And they can't take your life, liberty, or property without due process.
If you can remember those 4 sentences, you are miles ahead of the average citizen, and you have a genuine fighting chance on the bar exam.
You have the framework. The rest is just practice, applying that framework over and over again.
Before we go, I want to leave our listener with one final thought to chew on. We've talked about how the Constitution is a machine of checks and balances. Congress pushes, the courts block, individual rights push back. It's a system built on tension.
It is.
But notice something interesting about the referees, the justices of the Supreme Court.
What about them?
They are appointed by the president, a player from the executive branch, and they are confirmed by the Senate, a team from the legislative branch, the rule makers.
Right.
So if the referees are chosen by the players, can they ever truly be neutral? Can they be perfectly objective? Or is the great check and balance of judicial review actually just a mirror reflecting the political power of the moment it was created?
That is the eternal billion-dollar question, isn't it? Is law truly distinct from politics, or is it just politics in slow motion wearing a robe?
Something to mull over. Thank you for diving deep with us today.
Be curious.